Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, March 22nd, 2017. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Wednesday, everyone, and happy birthday, William Shatner. Today he is 86 years old. So it is 19 degrees, partly sunny here in upstate New York. All that snow that started melting over the last few days, we had 2 feet last weekend. It all got kind of drippy, has now turned into a big, slippery block of ice for anything that is left now that we are back in the deep freeze for the next few days. So where do we leave off yesterday? We titled the show Cheating Death, Billionaires, the Singularity, and techno-utopianism. That was a term that they used in that story about Kurzweil that we read yesterday. So we spent a lot of time looking at Kurzweil, looking at young blood, looking at biotechnology, mad science gone mad, looking at the fact that Rockefeller died, and kind of postulated it's very possible, especially with people like Peter Thiel and Kurzweil, we're really trying to steer the ship now for the future, and these guys are seriously trying to find ways to extend human existence beyond the grips of death. And they are selling this to us all in the name of healthcare. We found out in reading that story from 2010 about Ray Kurzweil yesterday that he had even suggested that maybe this is going to come through our healthcare, take us to the 21st century of the 21st Century Cures Act that now pretty much makes human experimentation legal. All you got to do is step right up and say that you're desperate. And that is your informed consent to allow them to experiment on you for these future technologies. I mean, I guess some chance is better than no chance at all. But on the other hand, every little bit that you give the machine is becoming information that the machine uses to build itself, to eventually get smarter and more powerful than us. I know you kind of laugh about that, but what do we do the day the machine wakes up? The day he realizes that he's smarter than us and we're not such good people, not us individually, but as a species. Maybe they need to fix us. Maybe they've imbued them with one of those morals like keep all humans safe. And they decide that we are a danger to ourselves. So there is no way to keep us safe. So the only way to keep us safe is to kill us all. I mean, it very possibly could turn into something like that. And that is not the type of future that we want to be seeing. We talked about a Bill Joy. Bill Joy, we'll open this because I'm pretty sure he worked for Oracle. And Ted Kaczynski. By the way, someone left me a comment on yesterday's show and suggested that we get a documentary on Ted. And I really wanted to do it last night, and then I got caught up with two different people who both needed my time and attention. So I had to take care of those things, but maybe tonight. I am hoping that I'll be able to watch it, but if you can give me just a second, I can get to the comment and we'll find the title. And it's still early, so hold on. I am having difficulty here. Here, we will find it. It's on YouTube. Anyway, it's a documentary on Kaczynski. Like I said yesterday, just watching the news, and that really had been all I had seen on the Unabomber originally when it all happened. You would have thought the man was a complete and utter lunatic. And it's very possible that he may have been, but all I'm saying is what they never told you is that he was a professor and that he was fighting against technology and some of the things that he saw coming in the future. Even though maybe his methods were a little violent to get his point across, I can guarantee you that he was probably all pent up with frustration and nobody would listen. We've all been there. This might have even been like before the days of ubiquitous internet. So he didn't even have a platform like this that he could get out and like just get it off his chest like we do every day. Um, but yeah, so the recommendation is called The Net, N-E-T, colon, the Unabomber, LSD, and the Internet. So I dropped the link in chat yesterday evening when I found it. For those of you who didn't get it, I will put it in the notes and I will drop it in chat this morning. And for DBS, who left me the suggestion in the notes of the show yesterday, I want to say thank you very much because I did not know that there was a documentary. So that'll be very helpful. The thing is, guys, just because this might be a taboo subject, ho, terrorists, he was a domestic, quote unquote, domestic terrorist is what he was tagged as. Here's the thing. What you don't realize is that right now they are working on demonizing people like you and me. So the future will see us as quote unquote conspiracy theorists and eventually as ones who brought down the narrative. We are the ones who spun the fake news mantra. And we have been detrimental to democracy because fake news was responsible for Trump getting elected. Wink. I mean, you see how this is happening? They came for, I don't know, I don't remember how it goes, but they came for the teachers and nobody cared. And they came for the doctors and nobody cared. And then they came for you and me. And, well, it was just a little bit too late. That's all I'm saying. Make sure you understand history and do like my mom says. Do not believe anything because somebody told you. So even though they told you that the Unabomber was a lunatic living in the woods, do your research because the rabbit hole may go much deeper. And by the title of that documentary, something about the Unabomber, LSD, and the internet, it sounds like it is way deeper than even I had known about. All right, so Bill Joy wrote a little essay, and he actually invokes not only the Unabomber, but Kurzweil in this story. Maybe we'll read a little bit of this. We probably did this maybe a year ago. We did page 1. We never made it to page 2. But we'll read the beginning here. And then we're going to get on to the rest of what I wanted to get on to today. This is out of Wired Magazine. Bill Joy, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us. Our most powerful 21st century technologies, robotics, genetic engineering, and nanotechnology are threatening to make humans an endangered species. This was April 1st, 2000. So interesting, he picked April Fool's Day to publish this, so if it really went over bad, he could always go, it was a joke. But he wasn't joking. From the moment I became involved, and this is Bill Joy, in the creation of new technologies, their ethical dimensions have concerned me. But it was only in the autumn of 1998 that I became anxiously aware of how great the dangers facing us in the 21st century are. I can date the onset of my unease to the day I met Ray Kurzweil. I'm telling you guys, Ray was around in the 90s, and we all used to just point and look at him and go, oh, there's weird Uncle Ray in the corner from the tech perspective, because he was blabbering stuff that definitely was things that we didn't want to hear, definitely way into the future. But Ray has been all about merging man with machine and bringing the dead back to life. This is why he's frightening. He's been put in a position of power. He has been given large sums of money. And he is not only one of the world's largest, most powerful corporations behind him, and I'm talking in terms of the internet, but he also has the DoD and DARPA. That is beyond frightening. I can date the onset of my unease, Bill Joy, to the day I met Ray Kurzweil, a deservedly famous inventor of the first reading machine for the blind and many other amazing things. Ray and I were both speakers at George Gilder's telecom conference, and I encountered him by a chance in the bar of a hotel after both our sessions were over. I was sitting with John Searle, a Berkeley philosopher who studies consciousness. And while we were talking, Ray approached and a conversation began. And the subject is one of which haunts me to this day. I had missed Ray's talk and the subsequent panel that Ray and John had been on. And now they picked right up where they left off, with Ray saying that the rate of improvement of technology was going to accelerate and they were going to become robots or fuse with robots or something like that. And John countered, saying this would never happen because robots could not become conscious. Now, side note, we have found a couple stories already, and I believe it was one of the Ivy Leagues. I don't know if it was MIT or if it was Stanford, if it was Harvard. One of them just recently announced that they think they may have found the seat of consciousness. So put on a seatbelt, because this was in 1998 that apparently this conversation was taking place. So fast forward 20 years, if you could even believe it, just about. That's where we're at now. But that ethicist says, oh, it could never happen. And Ray says, oh, yes, it could. So back to the story. Bill says, well, while I've heard such talk before, I had always felt sentient robots were in the realm of science fiction. But now, from someone that I respected, and that was John, I was hearing a strong argument that they potentially could be a near-term possibility. And I was taken aback, especially given that Ray has a proven ability to imagine and create the future. Ding. I already knew the technologies like genetic engineering and nanotechnology were giving us the power to remake the world. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. But a realistic and imminent scenario for intelligent robots surprised me. It's easy to get jaded about such breakthroughs. We hear in the news almost every single day some kind of technological or scientific advance, and yet this was no ordinary prediction. In the hotel bar, Ray gave me a partial preprint of his then forthcoming book called The Age of Spiritual Machines. Another one I have not read, but I really think we should. The scary thing is it gives you a glimpse into Kurzweil's mind. And I have trouble looking there because his future is such a scary future for me. But he is the man who is steering this now. And I guess we have to understand what his thoughts are to figure out how to undo what he is trying to do. So Ray's then forthcoming book, The Age of Spiritual Machines, which outlined a utopia that he foresaw. And yes, the robots are going to feed us grapes. One in which humans gained near immortality by becoming one with robotic technologies. Ding, 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 ding. And on reading the book, my sense of unease only intensified. I felt sure that he had been understanding the dangers, but he was understating the probability of a bad outcome along this path. See, this frightens me because Bill Joy was like CEO and founder of a huge company like Oracle. And 20 years ago, he was already saying, back up the truck, Chuck. Kurzweil is a little bit off his rocker, albeit a genius. And maybe we should be putting the brakes on. But apparently nobody listened. So Bill found himself most troubled by a passage in the book detailing a dystopian scenario. The new Luddite challenge. First, let us postulate that the computer scientists succeed in developing intelligent machines that can do all things better than human beings can do them. Ding, 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 ding. In that case, presumably all work will be done eventually by vast, highly organized systems of machines, and no human effort will be necessary. Well, we've already been talking about this, the cloud computing, and things such as the Baxter robot who can cloud learn, swarm learn, hive mind thinking. They are getting pretty far with all of those technologies right now. Either of those cases might occur, but the machines might also be permitted to make their own decisions, ding, 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 without human oversight, or else human control over the machines might be retained. And if the machines are permitted to make their own decisions, and there have been lots of smarty pants out there, Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, even creepy smarty pants like Billy Gates, coming out going, hey, autonomous killing machines, since most of any technology developed, and these technological advances, it seems, tend to all be developed all in the name of keeping us safe, right? We've established that many times, and funded with sprinkle funding from DARPA. DARPA love to hate DARPA. DARPA that apparently has developed all kinds of innovations like, the internet. Which really it was kind of CERN, if you look into that. But CERN was probably tied to DARPA even way back when they needed to transfer research data to universities. But it has been the military-industrial complex that has funded much of this technological innovation that now puts us at the cusp of potentially extincting human 1.0. And they've put Ray Kurzweil into the driver's seat. I mean, Ray isn't driving at all, but Ray is the mad scientist brain who's coming up with all these crazy ideas and an unlimited budget, lots and lots of cash to create brain-computer interfaces and self-thinking, self-reasoning machines, and deep learning, language processing, and recreating a synthetic brain to work just like a human brain. Then I saw, I need to do a couple searches because I ran across some stuff kind of going down the rabbit hole the other day that specifically said, and this is when I was digging deep into Kurzweil, like stuff I didn't know at all about him, that he was already working, and this was just recently, on some big project with DARPA. We need to figure out what project that was. But remember, they're all in bed. Everybody is butt patting and slippery hand slapping. That's just the way it goes. Don't believe them because they tell you. Remember, it's not 50 years from now that we are going to be experiencing the future, not needing us anymore. Good old Bill Joy. All right, let's get back here. We had a lot of smarty pants get together and say, hey, autonomous killing machines like, drones or Atlas robots are probably not such a good idea. And that led them to form this ethics board that includes big agencies and companies that I would not be putting all my eggs into their basket to think that they are going to keep me safe. But they had suggested that we come up with some way to stop the killer autonomous machine arms race from happening. Because remember, we are in an arms race with other countries. This technology is being democratized. There are countries such as China and Russia who have come up with their own DARPA-esque black hole Mad science gone mad to visions of the military. Just to be like us, because hey, DARPA produces such cool stuff. So now we have this not only mad science arms race, but it has been democratized. Remember, that term keeps coming up all over the place, and I really think that it is using a strategy that was always working well for Bill Gates. That's how Bill Gates knocked his competition out of the water. Remember, we talked about that antitrust lawsuit from the 90s that got settled a month or two after 9/11 when they finally told Billy to hand us the keys, wink, and we won't break you up. But that whole lawsuit was over Netscape Navigator, and some of the younger of you might not even know what Netscape Navigator was because it kind of vanished. But Netscape Navigator was a browser, and at the time, it was one of the only browsers. I think Netscape was one of the very first browsers that I ever used. Besides something that was manufacturer specific like Prodigy. When they had Prodigy, it was Prodigy's own window, and AOL, it was AOL's own window, and you browsed within their window like you were on a VPN. But the first Wild West browser where I could type in this newfangled thing called a URL and try and decode it and figure out how to get there and what it did. I'm pretty sure that was Netscape Navigator. And then, yeah, I'm just thinking. I don't remember. Firefox wasn't even a glimmer in anyone's eye back then. But then Windows 95 came out, and that was kind of a big turning point because that was really when the graphical user interface became like a big deal. We went from Windows 3.1.1 that still had a DOS backend, and people like me who still knew how to write in command line interface from our days of DOS. We were the only ones that were able to figure out how to get that networking to work. But Windows 95, it was the first time it became consumer friendly. The joke was plug and pray, because it was supposed to be easy and the machine would auto detect new hardware and configure it for you. And it took many years. I know it's way better now, all these years later. But not really. But back then, there was a big deal. But what they did was they made it so dumb end user friendly that you didn't even have to download a browser interface when you got your Windows 95 machine now because it was fully integrated into the operating system. And since Bill Gates had already demonstrated that most of the world was under his command as he was visiting third world nations that we had not had any diplomatic ties with for many generations, and he's selling them Windows computers. Bill Gates discovered very quickly that the Trojan horse is a very good business model for getting rid of competition and getting in the back door. And so when he slipped a browser into the operating system and got it on everybody's desktop across the world, guess what? It was way more difficult to download Netscape Navigator than it was to just double-click on the Internet Explorer button, ding, ding, and you had a browser, hence the lawsuit, but hence Bill Gates won. See, he democratized the browser. It was no longer a commodity. You didn't have to pay for it anymore. You didn't have to configure it. It was really easy. It was there. Click, click, click. You can go to the Internet. Look. And he put a corporation into shambles. Well, I really think that is his strategy. And he is one of the globalists that are pulling the strings right now. We are seeing all these technologies, quote unquote, democratized. Like CRISPR. Now, CRISPR can make someone $1 billion, but guess what? CRISPR has been spread all over the planet. 60,000 copies sent out by Addgene, and it can be copied and duplicated without any lostness. So now we have this technology in all these different countries and all these different back rooms and in Nana's garage Little Johnny's working on his DIY glow-in-the-dark beer kit. And they do have those, some sort of glow-in-the-dark yeast that you can CRISPR and then make beer with it. I don't think I'd be drinking that. But, I was thinking about this. So this Trojan horse, this democratization of now weapons of mass destruction. Not that a DIY glow-in-the-dark beer kit's going to be a weapon of mass destruction, but you know what I mean. Like we're CRISPR editing stuff in a back bedroom in New York City. And you can simply buy the parts for under $100 on eBay. We discovered, that should be disturbing. And now, as we have this open APIs to all these different AI technologies, IBM is really pushing hard. They want to get IBM Watson everywhere. They want to give you access to IBM Watson for free in code so you can build your new applications using Watson as your backend. And the payback for IBM, well, IBM is going to get to collect all that data that people who use your apps feed the machine and get smarter, bigger, faster. IBM is going to have you now as a business, maybe, or as an individual writing an application who has come to depend upon IBM Watson to run their backend. So at some point in the future, hey, this freebie package that you're using may not be enough to do what you want to do. Maybe I'm only going to give you 1,000 database entries. And once you hit 1,000, we're going to hope that you became very dependent on the free software that we gave you. And that now you're going to start paying us for it. And by the time that happens, they will have gotten IBM Watson into all of these different verticals, these different marketplaces, and they will make you depend on him. That's why they do free trials, and it's not just IBM. That's part of the thing. They give you a free trial. They give you enough just to get a taste. They make it convenient and easy, and it's free. But it's the Trojan horse. It gets into your back ends. It gets you to depend on it. It gets you addicted. Not really, but for all intents and purposes, it would be very difficult for you at that point in time where you then have reached the limits where it says you must pay for it now or you must go a little deeper, Johnny. They get you to that point that to deconstruct everything that you have now would be way more of a pain than it is worth. And so, a lot of times you concede. And just like Microsoft with Netscape Navigator and Internet Explorer, hey, I could have still gone out and installed Netscape. And I used to do that just to have 2 browsers on my machine. But guess what? It was difficult. Humans, 21st century humans, are pretty lazy. And they only have a 7-second attention span, that of a goldfish. It takes longer than 7 seconds to download a browser, so it's way easier just not to have to do anything and to give up by default. Guys, that is a game that they are playing on us. Remember, a lot of what is going on has come from the fact that they understand human nature, they understand how the mind works, and they understand how to manipulate the mind. How to direct you, just like a mousie in a maze. It's disturbing. It's disturbing because we don't pay attention. We're not even aware half the time that we are being manipulated. But always stop and think before you jump. Because that next jump could be off the cliff. Just because you're following everybody else doesn't mean that you have to go off the cliff too. Hey, let them go off the cliff. That's what I tell my daughter. She'll say something and I keep trying to teach her, the lesson of the lemmings. And I'm like, hey, my mother used to say this too. If all your friends jumped off a cliff, would you jump off a cliff too? And I was like, well, especially at like 12 or 13, you're kind of like, nah, no, then don't do it. But human nature doesn't change. We tend to follow others because it's easy. But you never get anywhere in life if you do everything the easy way. That was something I learned very early on. Take the hard way, if for no other reason, to challenge yourself. I've had one of those personality disorders where, and I think my daughter has it too, but holy crap. Talk about like driving mama bat crazy. But I was never able to take the easy way. Ever, 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 ever. Somebody tried to give me advice. Well, I'm not going to listen to that advice because I'm one of those people that needs to figure it out for myself and get the bruises, do a hands-on analysis, but then I never forget it. And it brings me to some very deep conclusions, and I think that that's why. I think telling me, and maybe as I've gotten older it's changed a little bit, but at least when I was younger, I needed to take the lumps to get the lesson. There was just no way around that. But we should get beyond that. We don't have any more time to take lumps. And I think that is the big point of all of this. The lumps are over. We've taken the lumps, and the lumps have gotten really big. We need some ice now. And we can't take any more because they're about ready to stomp the last of the life out of human 1.0 and make us bigger, better, faster. They're going to cure us now. Johnny, they're going to cure us with their 21st century technology. All right, let's get back to this. I want to finish up and move on. So Bill Joy's telling the story, and he met Ray Kurzweil in a bar after a conference that they did, and Ray left him haunted for years after that. So he was talking about autonomous machines, and if machines were permitted to make all of their own decisions, we can't make any conjectures as to the results because it is impossible to guess how the fate of the human race would be at the mercy of the machines. Well, I can figure it out. But we are suggesting neither that humans voluntarily turn their power over to the machines, nor that the machines would willfully seize power. But what we are suggesting is that the human race might easily permit itself to drift into a position of such a dependence, ding, 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 on these machines, that we would have no practical choice in the future but to accept all of the machine's decisions. Well, that was my point of that long soliloquy. They've gotten in the back end. They are the Trojan horse. We have become so dependent on them to run the machine, and our trial period is about to run out. So what do? Do we deconstruct all of Western society and remove all the machines from our life, or do we accept it and move forward now that they have moved into healthcare, now that they have brain implants, now that they have nanobots in your blood? Step right up. Because I hate to tell you, Johnny, they're not turning it off. Bill Joy called that one. And that was the danger that he called, that there was no practical choice but to accept all of the machine's decisions. And as a society, and the problems that face it become more and more complex, and machines become more and more intelligent, he says, people will let the machines make more of their decisions for them, simply because machine-made decisions will what? Oh, bring better results, so they say, than the man-made ones. And we already see them pushing that mantra. You know, I have a very bad feeling that this Trump election, it's serving many purposes, but one of the big purposes that I think they will use it for in the future is to prove how faulty human decision-making is when swayed by emotions. And that is something that has come up many times in our research so far. I think they're also going to use it to push the fake news initiative. You know, Obama said that was one of the things he might focus on when he gets out of office, is combating fake news. Well, it's apparent that they've tied Trump into this whole thing. They're going to combat it all. And Trump is just playing a useful stooge coming up there, spouting off news from alternative media outlets. And, you know, I'm not going to say that some of it isn't true, but I think Trump opens his mouth sometimes before he thinks and before he does his due diligence. Don't believe something because they told you. That's been a very, very good, what's the word I'm looking for? Mantra over my years of life. Do your own research. You don't want to look like a fool opening your mouth, saying something that somebody told you, and then you find out, oh, well, that isn't quite what they meant, or, oh, they kind of exaggerated a little bit. Don't look like the fool. But they're going to use this to now show how, unless you have an official license to speak the official narrative, you can't be trusted. You aren't spreading truth, and you might even be a danger because, look, now we have these lunatics that are running around creating problems based on stories that, are considered quote-unquote fake news. Just saying. But eventually, a stage may be reached at which the decisions necessary to keep the system running will be so complex that human beings will be completely incapable of making them intelligently. And I'm going to say then that's the point that they bring out the big dollies and they roll out Watson for president. Watson for the head of UN. Watson for the big pulsating brain that runs the world. Watson for God. Wait and see, guys. I don't know. It might not be Watson. Might be some other big pulsating brain. But I really see this as our potential future. If we are not careful, that is where we're going to end up. And if you leave people like Ray in charge, that's about where we're headed. People won't even be able to just run and turn the machines off like Obama says. But they will be so dependent on them that turning them off would amount to suicide. And I believe there was a Star Trek episode with William Shatner that dealt with something very much like that. On the other hand, and maybe Bill gets a little rosier in this paragraph. On the other hand, he's painting a very bleak picture of the future. It is possible that human control over the machines may be retained. In that case, the average man may have control over certain private machines of his own, such as his car or his personal computer. And yeah, self-driving cars. I don't know, though. I don't know if they're going to give you an override button. And on our personal machines, by the way, in the old days, we used to hack and crack back in even 2000. We were building them and cracking operating systems and overdriving processors. You can't do that anymore. Get a little Windows 10 box. And actually, the personal computer is going to be going away. Eventually, it's going to all be in the cloud. And you're just going to have a terminal like the old days of the green screen. That's all the tablet is, or that's all a Chromebook is. It's just a terminal. And I mean, some of these newer machines that we had to buy, those little tiny ones when our automation server blew up last year. I mean, I think they were, $130, $140 on Dell. And I told you it's the size of like a granola box. What are they called? Granola bar box. Just a tiny little machine. No hard drive in it. So I had to go external, a little external drive. You could do just a flash in it. A processor, CPU, I upgraded it 2 gigs, so I think there's 4 gig of memory in there. And the memory upgrade was like $25, which is insane because it used to be $100 a meg back in the 90s. So you were looking at thousands and thousands of dollars to do a single memory upgrade for a chip. And on the servers I used to configure, many of them had this what they called interleaved memory, which meant that you had to upgrade in 4s when you had like a dual or quad CPU on there. And that was back in the 90s I was configuring that stuff. We had some real high-end technologies that now really, I mean, this resiliency that I used to configure where you would have multiple machines and they would all be talking together, and we'd do these heartbeat links so they could work in conjunction, and they would do something called load balancing, but it was also a good failover. So if one machine died, you would have the other one that was an exact duplicate and it could take over. But that evolved. All that technology that we were building then, and I mean, it was huge amounts of computing power with big external drive arrays, and you wouldn't even believe the amount of heat that this stuff put off, let alone the amount of space that it took up. And that was a big rack full of equipment to just do that. And that was just one set of PCs. If you had a large organization, you had racks and racks like that. But all that stuff evolved and moved, whoop, up into the cloud. There was hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, and whoop, now we're talking $130 little rinky-dink computer that can run Windows 10, has no servicing really much at all because there's nothing really inside of it anymore. Unlike the old days when we were ripping them apart and doing all kinds of crazy stuff to them. I don't even worry about upgrades because, hey, Microsoft takes care of that all by themselves. And in Windows 10, I can't even figure out how to turn it off. There is no off button for the updates anymore. And so it goes. They are going to take this all, so we will not have control over the machine at all in the future. It will be feeding it out to us, just like our televisions. Our TVs, back in the old days, used to have people, high voltage, Johnny, but you used to have people going in, changing tubes. I had a friend back in the 80s, that's what he did for a living. He fixed video games and jukeboxes and TVs and anything electronic like that. 1982. He was a smart little cookie and all self-taught. But he did that for a living. There was nobody out there like him, and he just had this technical aptitude, and it was all about high voltage and this transition from analog to digital. But see, there isn't much of that anymore. This is all going away. This is all getting smaller, bigger, faster. It's all transistors. It all becomes disposable. And eventually, it becomes implantable. And that's where we ended up the other day. This is this progression. This machine is going to disappear, kind of like our pinky toe. It hasn't quite, but it hasn't been very useful. And as it gets bigger brained, smaller, faster, more intelligent, and then they're tying this into healthcare as well. They want biosensors. They want to be able to get your heartbeat. They want to be able to monitor you all in the name of keeping healthcare costs down and being able to make sure that you're healthy. Wink. That's how they're going to sell it to you. And you want to live forever, Johnny. You got to get the implant. That's all. Tiny nanobot doctors in your blood will make sure that you live forever. Anyway, in the future, we might have certain control over private machines, such as my car or my personal computer, but control over the large systems of machines will be in the hands of a tiny elite, ding, 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 Amazon, Google, IBM. And just as it is today, except there will be two big differences in the future. Due to improved techniques, the elite will have greater control over the masses. And because human work will no longer be necessary, ding, 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 robots coming to take the jobs, the masses will be superfluous or superfluous, a useless burden on the system, universal basic income. And if the elite is ruthless, they may simply decide to exterminate the mass of humanity. Ding, 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 ding. Now, this was in 2000, guys. This is exactly, it's like they follow this as a blueprint because this is about what we're at. We're right at that cusp, what they decide to do with the more than half of the 7 billion people that are going to be replaced in jobs. And if these controllers are humane, instead of exterminating the mass of humanity, they may use propaganda or other psychological or biological techniques, ding, 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 to reduce the birth rates until the mass of humanity becomes extinct. Oxitec and some of that reproductive reduction technology utilizing CRISPR and gene drives, financed in part by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has nothing to do with research into that. Oh, no, it doesn't. Leaving the world in the end to the ruling elite. Now, this guy is not a tinfoil hat wearing lunatic, okay? This is Bill Joy. Or if the elite consists of soft-hearted liberals, which it probably doesn't, they may decide to play the role of good shepherds. Well, we need one of those. Elon Musk, I hope you're a good guy. To the rest of the human race. And I mean, Elon Musk has thrown out a life preserver, and he's decided, he said this in an interview, that he was going to try to take as many people to Mars as he could to save the human race. This person, maybe, who wants to play the good shepherd, will see to it that everyone's physical needs are satisfied and that all the children are raised under psychologically hygienic conditions. So that's a weird phrase. And that everyone has a wholesome hobby to keep them busy. So this, of course, is after the robots take all the jobs and we're sitting around being fed grapes with nothing to do except artistic pursuits. And that anyone who becomes dissatisfied with this new utopia undergoes a quote-unquote treatment to cure his quote-unquote problem. Yes, we know what that means. Brain implants for you, Johnny. Here, eat this special banana. Of course, life at that point will be so purposeless that people will have to be biologically or psychologically engineered. Ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding. To either remove their need for the power process or to make them sublimate their drive for power into some harmless hobby. And remember, so we talked about bored people tend to make troublemakers. And if we end up with half the planet without jobs to keep us toiling endlessly, keep us exhausted, not paying attention, to get angsty, we're going to have a problem, Clyde. And they're going to have to chemically lobotomize us at some point. And now they even have more special tools than chemical lobotomizations. Now we just have little nanobots or plugging you into something or zippity zap and ElectRx right next to your near ear. Dopamine vagus nerve stimulation can get you as high as a kite now. That'll be your soma. These engineered beings may be happy in such a society. And see, we've gotten to this point. If you take us old-timers, I'm not an old-timer, but we're getting there. You take us old-timers, and you tell us to be bored, be lazy. I hate to tell you, I don't know if this is with everyone, but I know my great-grandparents came here from Poland, at least on the one side of my family. But they were hard stock, people who got beaten up a lot, never had life easy, worked really hard for everything they had. And when they came to this country, they started their own farm and then started their own business, and everyone got into cars, and they made their own fortunes. They're all dead now, but most of them are anyway. But they did. They took blue collar and being a citizen and working hard for everything they had very seriously. And that was something that was ingrained into me growing up. I grew up in a blue-collar family, but I grew up in a blue-collar family that most of the relatives were very successful, and they all did it on their own. They all started their own businesses. They were all stubborn as hell, but they all knew how to work hard. There was no being lazy. There was no excuses, Jewel. No excuses. I don't want to hear it, my dad would say. I couldn't say. I would argue about everything, and he would not. Nope, I don't want to hear it. That was it. Do it. I get kicked in the ass. Do it. But I'm glad that he did, because these generations now, kids aren't taught to work hard. Kids aren't taught to have pride in what they do or what they accomplish, because everybody gets an award. Kids aren't taught to not break it. It's a disposable society. Back in the 70s, you broke your favorite toy, there was going to be a lot of tears because there was no money to buy another one. You were going to get dad duct taping its head back on, is what you were going to get. And then you were going to cry because it looked ugly. But that's just what happened. And guess what? It was a good lesson because you didn't do it again. But see, they've groomed us. They've made us soft and squishy like marshmallows. High fructose corn syrup. And television have helped that out as well. And the Kardashians, big butts. You know, all distraction. And got us away from knowing what hard work is all about, knowing what competition is all about, knowing how to take the good and the bad, Johnny, how to lose, and how to take that defeat and use it to your advantage to make you better in the future, to pick it apart and analyze it, to figure out what you did wrong so you never made that mistake again. But see, it teaches critical thinking skills. And critical thinking skills are the one thing that they wanted to breed out of us badly, because people with critical thinking skills are people like you and me. We are the thorn in the side of the system. We are the obsolete humans in this not too distant future that is coming up. We will not willingly get on our knees and open our mouths to accept this new transcendent communion that you want to give us. Eat your nanobots. Connect to the machine. I'm not going to do it. I hope you don't either. Don't fall for it. These kids are so connected. This dopamine addiction, they want this machine. And if they would offer you to be connected 24/7, it's not going to cost you anything more. It's not even going to hurt, Johnny. You know, even though we saw that Pew Research study that showed the majority of Americans do not want brain implants. One of the things that I noticed is that they called them brain implants, and that kind of gives you a vision of someone cracking your skull open and implanting something in your brain, shaving all your hair off. That's kind of an ugly image. But if they called them something else, like memory enhancers or live forever, it's all about branding and marketing. This is using Bernaysian psychology, and Bill Joy even calls it out. They called it like the superhuman upgrade. And all you got to do is eat this tasty little sucky drop. I mean, who knows? Why couldn't they? We found out to get this technology inside of you, the small intestine and the nose and the skin all make good entry points to cross the blood barrier. But if they made it easy and painless and they made it sound cool, look at, isn't that how Apple made their billions? Apple went from a $7 a share company, and then they came out with the pretty colors, and they always had big push buttons and things on the screen. But when they came out with the pretty colors and the all-in-one machine that made it dumb and user-friendly and pretty, they sold like hotcakes, and their stock went crazy, and they relaunched themselves as a bigger Apple than they ever were in the past. That's all it takes. People are so malleable and so gullible. That's all it takes. And then you start a frenzy, and everyone starts running after it. And then we've been groomed to keep up with the Joneses, so it becomes a buying frenzy, and you become, as the company or whoever it is that created this new technology, you become a staple. You become integrated into everybody's lives. That's the Trojan horse. Anyway, They will see to it that everyone's physical needs are satisfied and that all children are raised under psychologically hygienic conditions and that everyone has a wholesome hobby to keep him busy and that anyone who may become dissatisfied undergoes a quote-unquote treatment to cure his or her quote-unquote problem. And of course, at this point, life will be so purposeless that people will have to be biologically or chemically or psychologically engineered to either remove their need for power processing or to make them sublimate their drive for power into some harmless hobby. These engineered humans may be happy in such a society, but they will most certainly not be free. They will have been reduced to the status of a domestic animal. Now, I am almost going to have to think that Elon Musk must have read this essay because Elon Musk talked about us in the future being relegated to pets of AI if they don't decide to kill us first. And I could guarantee you, I mean, Bill Joy is one of the big boys from the past in the tech industry, and I'm going to guarantee that Elon Musk has read this. In Kurzweil's book, and that's what we were talking about from the very beginning, you don't discover until you turn the page that the author of this passage is actually Theodore Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Bill Joy was no apologist for Kaczynski. His bombs killed 3 people during a 17-year campaign and wounded many others. But like many of Bill Joy's colleagues, he also felt that they could have possibly been the Unabomber's next target. He was very anti-technology and obviously warned against the perils of the future. Kaczynski's dystopian future, however, describes the unintended consequences, a well-known problem with the design and the use of technology, and one that is clearly related to Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will. And that's always served me well also. And anything that can go wrong will be where we pick it up the next time. All right, guys, have a nice Wednesday, and I will pick up with you tomorrow.